morning. Hello, good morning. How lovely to see you here. Oh gosh, welcome to Barcelona. Welcome to MWC 23. My name is Sasha Twining, and it is my absolute pleasure to host you for this morning's keynote. Keynote number 4, the evolution of innovation. But what actually does that mean? They're brilliant words, aren't they? The evolution of innovation. But what does it mean? Well, it means that when one industry innovates, others can take that innovation and evolve, and both industries can thrive. So you see innovation in this sector moving out to other sectors. Now, I've been at MWC for, some 11 years now, and I vividly remember the first time I saw a car here. And it was like, hang on, this is a mobile phone show, right? There's a car there. What's all that about? And I remember the first time there was so much buzz about there being a car launched here rather than being launched at a car show where you would expect. And I'm pretty sure you probably remember the same sort of thing. In fact, actually, I tell you what, should we find out? Do you mind if we just have the house lights up for a sec? Is that all right? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so who in this room remembers the first time they saw a car here at MWC? Raise your hands for me. Yeah, first time you saw a car, okay. What about, give me another sector. Health. Can you remember the first time you saw something here that was to do with the health sector and not connected with mobile phones? Yeah, absolutely, that hand went straight up there. You're in pharmaceuticals or something, aren't you? I remember the connected toothbrush. Do you remember the first connected toothbrush? And everyone was like, oh, look at that. Let me give you another one. Banking. Remember the first time you saw a bank? Yeah? Financial services? There's quite a lot of people up there, financial services. What about in the home? And the first time you saw something here that wasn't anything to do with a mobile phone, but you would find in your home. What about the connected fridge? Who remembers the connected fridge the first time? Yeah. Lots and lots of people. Okay, we can put the lights down now, thank you. My point is, so many examples of when one industry innovates and then other industries use that innovation to evolve. And that is exactly what we are going to show you for the next 90 minutes. And we've got some amazing examples for you. Which brings me on to our first guest and our first company this morning. Now, I could spend probably quite a lot of time listing all the different areas that this company is involved in, all the different areas and all the different things that they do. But I think, ladies and gentlemen, that this will do it better.
We live on the edge. In environments that require speed, agility, interoperability, and resilience to succeed. Where the powers of secure 5G, AI, cloud computing, and more must become one. We are Lockheed Martin. Being a maverick is in our DNA. We break beyond the boundaries and innovate at hypersonic speeds. Because our collective future demands it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chairman, President, and CEO of Lockheed Martin, Jim Taiclet. Good to see you, Jim.
Morning,
Thank you very
Sasha.
much. Good morning. Come and take a seat. First off, you know this is a mobile phone show, right?
Indeed,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I'm in the right place.
Yeah, are you sure about that? Is this your first time here?
It's my first time here, but I spent 20 years running American Tower, where we globalized, the commercial use of digital infrastructure around the world. And so I've taken the lessons from that and tried to bring them to Lockheed Martin and ultimately to national defense and climate protection and all the other things that we do, and even to space and the moon.
Oh, we're going to get onto that. Don't worry about that. So you're sitting here with people from many, many different industries, actually, as we've just discovered. What's the technology that you're looking for that you think the mobile phone industry has and has been innovating with that actually can evolve and could really help you?
Yeah. So we're an aerospace and defense industry company, but our business is the business of deterrence and exploration. Deterrence from conflict and exploration of science. And so what I've observed, having worked in the mobile industry and in the aerospace industry, is that we have a huge opportunity in our industry vertical to really accelerate the adoption of digital 21st century technologies into the things we do, the missions we perform. You saw some of the firefighting mission on the screen a little bit earlier. There is a lot of opportunity for us to be able to really improve the climate impact of fires, and not to mention the human impact and property impact by networking an Internet of Things of all the platforms, helicopters, satellites, trucks that we use to fight fires today, but use that digital technology to really create an Internet of Things for that mission to take care of our national interests.
So in many, many different ways, but looking at the technology from this industry.
Right.
Now, let's look at some of the big themes that are really dominating the conversations at MWC 23 and see sort of how they fit in with you. I mean, we can talk about connectivity. You've talked about the Internet of Things, 5G. We can talk about all of that. But one of the areas that is really dominating this year is AI and autonomy. And there was a lot of conversation about that yesterday. And I'd be really interested to talk to you about that. And I noticed in your film at the beginning, we had scenes from Top Gun, Maverick.
That's right.
Looked absolutely amazing. But it occurred to me that actually one of the main storylines in that film at the very, very beginning is that the Dark Star project is going to be disbanded because AI is going to come along and it's going to take the place of the pilots. We're not going to need people. We're not going to need people to fly these planes, is the idea of why the project's going to be disbanded. So when you, as in your position, look at AI, how do you see that fitting within the defense industry? And do you see that, AI and autonomy, as taking the place of humans within defense?
In a short answer, no. Humans are always going to be involved in national defense to make decisions of when to employ capabilities, when not to, et cetera. So when there's any kind of action that needs to be taken, there'll always be a human decision maker. And there's even an ethical AI center in our company to help advise the government, and they have equivalents too, on how do you keep humans completely in control of national defense platforms, even while you use AI to assist those humans in making effective decisions. And one of those effective decisions could be making sure that a drone that thinks it sees a target actually seeing the right target. So reducing unintended injuries, et cetera, from the operation. And so if you take the firefighting mission for a second, and AI and autonomy are incredibly important in increasing our ability to predict where the fires may begin, to then suppress the fires, and make sure that once these even are predicted ahead of time, that we can move assets in place using AI engines to basically do data fusion from a number of sources, right? And the value of AI in all of our missions for national defense and for climate protection are really to take huge amounts of data and turn it into useful information for human decision makers. So in the firefighting mission, for example, we're working with NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, who has weather satellites that are constantly sensing moisture, rain, wind. We have lightning sensors on these. We build these satellites for NOAA, which is part of the Department of Commerce. But even to figure out where the fire perimeter is right now takes a number of hours to get that information to a frontline firefighter who's actually got to put people in harm's way to try to fight that fire. We've got a way, by doing data fusion, running it through an AI engine, and using a digital twin of the Earth to show what the ground conditions are, fuel, et cetera, that NVIDIA is working with us on right now, to give that commander really useful information instead of data way too late. So they'll get useful information, and the AI engine will give options in order of what it thinks is best. And then the fire commander is going to be able to make a decision, literally pick off his or her iPad. I really like the second option, and I'm going to click that. That information is going to go right to the frontline people. Why? Because we're going to have an autonomous drone system that will, and we have this already that we're working with the Army on, a 5G class network from satellite communications onto the drones who are flying around under the firefighters to get them that information that the commander says, this is the way to most safely and effectively fight the fire right now.
So you see AI as helping you, I don't want to say merely, because it's hardly a little thing, but actually in the chewing through the data and the predicting there. You mentioned you had, do you call it sort of an ethical department? What was the?
So we have an AI ethics team.
Right, thank you, the ethics team. I mean, do you, because it's very difficult to have, your own internal team when you're looking at ethics, because that has to be something that almost has to be outsourced,
right,
so that you get, the full transparency. Do you feel there should be more of that, or how do you sit with that?
So I think every vertical probably has to have a center or a team like this, both in industry, so the players in the industry, and then secondly, in government and regulatory agencies, et cetera, even in an organization like GSMA, because industry and operators, just like in the mobile supply chain, the mobile operators can only use what the industry technology and supply chain has developed for them to choose from. So industry needs to have, in the design phase, AI ethics right at the beginning of the process of designing and even conceptualizing new products and services, right? And so, for example, at American Tower, we were also working on the autonomous car network, ground vehicles, commercial for the United States. We learned that it was probably going to start with the trucking industry and then go to, commercially go eventually to automobiles. But the network requirements of that system were going to take decades to develop. So right at the beginning, we were figuring out problems like, well, how do we use cyber security methods to prevent AI data, automated data fusion going into, say, all the red lights in the city of Chicago and turning them green at the same time and causing crashes, or turning off the braking system for one of the OEM's car systems. So we'd been, thinking about what are those connections, what are those data flows, how can they be interrupted, interfered with, hacked, and let's not create a risk to humans and take, again, humans out of the loop, so to speak, in decision-making, because AI is, quote, taking over. So it's not just the aerospace and defense industry, it's every industry vertical really should think about what's the ethical AI approach to the design, the initial design and conceptualization of what we think we're going to be doing.
Just really briefly, because you've mentioned public and private there, who do you think should actually lead on that, public or private, government, or rely on the industry to do it?
So I think you spoke about the evolution of innovation. Yeah. It has to be both, because industry is probably going to come up with the conceptualized opportunity set sooner. Government needs to then bring the public's perspective to that early in the process. So it has to be an iterative, in a way, joint activity going forward. And as I said, in the aerospace industry, we do work with the Department of Defense on basically ethical AI approaches to concepts and designs for what we're going to be doing in the future.
so much to talk to you about because Lockheed Martin just spans so many different areas. An area that people are always really interested in is space.
Right.
Space exploration. And actually, I just saw your eyes light up then. It's like, yes, space, let's get out there. Right, I'm going to let you choose. Do you want to talk about the moon or Mars?
You have to talk about both at the same time. Because to get to Mars, which is theoretically a multi-week or multi-month journey, the moon is the way station to stage for that next leg of the trip. And the moon will be a source of exploration, and it already has been, but it's becoming even more important. For example, the Orion spacecraft, which we designed and built for NASA, is not just moon mission rated, it's Mars mission rated. And so that spacecraft, where the astronauts will be in and live for months, is being prototyped and tested in the moon mission. We had our first successful launch, mission, and recovery in moon's orbit, back to the Earth, splashdown, heat shield, everything worked well. That mission can also be ultimately accomplished all the way out to Mars and back, but the staging area will probably be the moon. To make the moon a useful exploration base, as the Earth is today, you have to have a number of essentially services on the moon or accessible to the moon. One is communication. Second is autonomy. And to have autonomy, you need GPS, a global positioning system for the moon, for positioning, navigation, and timing services, which we all use in the mobile industry on Earth to time our cell phones and watches. We're not doing that ourselves. GPS is doing it. We make the GPS satellites too. So we've actually set up a subsidiary in our company, and we have a project called Parsec, where we're working with non-aerospace and space industry partners to figure out how do we create a services set on the moon for mobility, autonomy, GPS, and communication, because that's the next exploration base that we're going to need to go to Mars.
What else are we going to need, though? What else are you going to need? The tech, the innovation, whatever it's going to be, to make a really successful, sustainable mission to Mars, if, as you very obviously believe, it's going to happen?
It will take many years.
Okay.
It will happen because humans' limit for exploration is boundless, right? As soon as we're able to go that far, we're going to, as a species, try to go that far. But really, for a number of the missions, like we have integrated air and missile defense, so that if a hypersonic missile is shot at the United States, we have to figure out how are we going to be able to process data fast enough at high enough volume to intercept that missile and prevent harm to our citizens, right? So what we need to do as an overall mission in the aerospace and defense industry with our government partners is to say, how can we take the very best of commercial 21st century digital technologies and help us, because we don't have in our industry, nor the government has the resources that this ecosystem has for chip design, which we're working with Intel on, for example, in creating digital twins and simulation models, which we're working with NVIDIA on. We don't have it for 5G, which we're working with Verizon on, for example, and others. And I'm just giving you just a couple of highlights. Cohere is working with us on waveforms. So we've tried to create a dream team of the leading commercial companies, all the way from the largest to the smallest. We even have a venture group at Lockheed Martin. You probably won't think we have a venture capital team there, where we seed money into small startups because their technology is really promising to accelerate into our ecosystem. So we really need the commercial technology and telecom industry to be able to take advantage of protecting our country, our allies, and ultimately our exploration capabilities and firefighting as a climate service, for example. We need you to work with us, and we will drive together that innovative evolution, both directions, frankly, because we're pretty good in our industry at cybersecurity, at something called resilient communications, meaning there are people trying to jam our communications. When you have an autonomous car system, there will be hackers and others trying to jam those systems. We have another issue called low probability of detection, meaning when I'm flying in a fighter jet, I don't want others to know where I am. And if I'm transmitting out of a radio system, they're going to know where I am. So how do we pack a lot of data into a really short transmission with high bandwidth and really quick, to receive and transmit? We need to turn to you all for that.
I think that was a direct appeal, a direct plea that actually there's maybe a lot of more partnerships, more collaboration to be had, which, Jim, I think brings us incredibly nicely on to another company that you are collaborating with at the moment. Collaborating in, I think, quite an eyebrow-raising way when we hear some of the figures of what we're about to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, from Cohere Technologies, please welcome onto stage CEO Ray Dolan.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Ray. Good to see you. Good to see you too. We'll talk more in a moment, but do take the stage.
Wonderful. Wow. It's great to see you, Barcelona, Mobile World Congress 2023. I was blessed to join this industry in 1986 in Los Angeles. It's been an amazing journey. A lot of transformational technology, generation after generation, evolving to where we are today, this massive industry ready to take on additional challenges, integrating verticals like the defense industry, and frankly, more to come. It's not only a thrill to be with you, but it's particularly a thrill to be with Jim and Sasha. I've known Jim for 30 plus years, so to share the stage and talk about building business solutions together is a real joy, Jim, and I look forward to our discussion. I thought I'd provide maybe a few minutes of context, though, on Cohere, so that you understand the context of what you just saw. And my guess is there may be one or two skeptics in the room that say, wait a minute, you're going to go hypersonic. We're having a hard enough time just handling mobility and 5G. So let me share a story as to how Cohere started. In 2011, our founder, Shlomo Rakib, who's a serial entrepreneur, had the vision to change the world by going to a radar-based approach, taking principles of basic radar and building an entire cellular system off of that. From 2011 to 2016, 17, we built that prototype and proposed it to the industry. And of course, the industry said no. This industry doesn't like disruption. So the industry decided yet again to use the existing technology and widen it. And just for historical purposes, I was the co-founder and CEO of a company called Flareon Technology, which in the midst of an industry like this proposed an OFDM approach when the world was a CDMA business. And of course, at that time, the industry decided to use a wider version of CDMA, forecast that it would get new revenue, got more voice, didn't get more revenue. So there's just a thought that I want to plant in your head. When the industry decides to go from OFDM to wideband OFDM and asks, where's the new revenue, we may be asking that for a little while, okay? So we lost. 3GPP decided to go with a wider version of OFDM. What did we do? We took the solution apart into two pieces. One's a platform that we call a channel model. We've actually given it a name called Universal Spectrum Multiplier. And we set aside the waveform that you just saw that video doing and waited our turn for a use case to stress 5G. Now, what's the platform, the Universal Spectrum Multiplier? I'm not going to get into technology here, but here's what I'll say. Most of you have had the experience where you've either been in the US Capitol or St. Paul's Cathedral or the Taj Mahal, and you've gone on a tour, and they've told you and a colleague to stand in specific places, and you whisper in the midst of a tremendous amount of noise, and miraculously you hear each other perfectly, right? They didn't tell you what language to speak, okay? Because the building doesn't reflect English or French or German or Latin. The building reflects energy. So does the network that we live in, the world we live in. It reflects energy. The language we speak may be 3G or 4G or 5G or 6G. So what we did was we created a universal solution that sensed the environment that we all live and move around in. And that solution radically simplifies connectivity, and in fact, in today's world has already demonstrated that it doubles the capacity of 4G and it doubles the capacity of 5G. In any spectrum, paired or unpaired, at any frequency, using everything else off the shelf. And of course, now it's great that we've deployed that in trials with various operators, that it's time for us to come back to the initial vision, which is like, we now have operators saying, hey, we're struggling a little bit with 5G use cases. What was that thing we rejected 6, 7 years ago? What did it do? Why did you propose it? Well, for the same reasons that the USM works, that waveform eats velocity for lunch, okay? The world that we live in time frequency, velocity is an impairment. In the OTFS world, velocity stands still, it's a constant, and acceleration's an impairment. We move the entire world into another integration if you're a calculus fan, okay? This is all math. That's as complicated as I'm gonna get. We are now putting OTFS back on top of that universal spectrum multiplier and resolving challenges that companies like Lockheed need in order to provide secure, robust communications to things that move fast. Satellites moving through orbit 22,000 miles an hour. We can make them look like they're standing still. People think you can only send an SOS symbol to a satellite. You can send whatever you want to a satellite if you use the right technology. So we're extremely excited to bring this to market. The platform itself is a hosting engine. The promise is to allow it to host the defense industry, the global shipping industry, the medical industry, and to let the waveform do what that industry wants to do, instead of asking that industry to conform to 5G. So that's what we're really all about. I'll keep my comments to that. Sasha, I'd like to join you and Jim, and we can continue the conversation.
Come and take a seat. Thank you. Ray, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Before we go any further, you two know each other, don't you? I think we need to make that absolutely clear. How long have you two known each other?
It's a good 30 years. I came out of the Air Force and ended up at McKinsey, and Ray was at 9X Mobile, and we started working together in the 1990s.
And a lot of things in common, actually, both pilots. Yes, which may or may not be something which anyone in the room knows, but just very, very briefly, you've never flown together, but have very similar experiences, right?
I'm a little older than Jim, so I had my military jet pilot career starting in 1980, and I think, Jim, you probably started about 3 or 4 years later?
Yep, that's right. I was in the Air Force, by the way, hence the blue suit. I appreciate lots of other people wearing the blue suits today.
Is it always a blue suit, then?
I've got a couple gray ones.
It feels more comfortable.
Yeah, I've got a couple gray ones. We want to represent.
So I'm wondering whether, because of that experience, that very much that real life experience, you realized that this was a challenge that actually you understood? So you understood from your own industry point of view, but you understood from your experience. And Ray, you're both nodding at me, right?
Yes. So I've also known Jim when he was the CEO of American Tower. When he went on to take on the Lockheed mission, among other things, he talked about communication enabling the entire defense industry. And that made sense to me. And the warfighter environment is potentially the most complex environment in the world, and its requirements for security and resiliency are enormous. And then Jim talked about, like, there's times where you want to have a fat pipe, and there's other times that you don't even want anyone to know you're there. And so those two compete with each other, because this industry tries to drive capacity, and there's times where Jim's customers may want to say, I want to be able to communicate below the noise floor where people don't even know I exist. Right. And so one of the most exciting parts of OTFS is it's a completely programmable and dimensionable waveform. In fact, interestingly, it's the mother waveform, because if you take it to one extreme, it's FDMA. These are terms that most of the folks in the industry understand. If you take it to the other extreme, it's TDMA. I thought those were the only options. In fact, those are the limits of an infinite set of options that's programmable. So now what we can provide to Jim and other members of his industry are very fat pipes that are robust for the communications that want that, and then very narrow, highly reliable, non-discoverable communication in environments like that. So this is what we were built for. So we're welcoming any industry that wants to stress the use cases of the cellular industry. We now have a platform that can host it. OTFS will be one of them. If other folks innovate and create new waveforms, we'll host those as well.
So, Jim, tell us sort of the challenges that you were having before you went into this partnership. Give us an idea of actually what was there that you were trying to use and the gaps that you were sort of trying to fill, as it were.
So let's maybe use an example here. When we're trying to understand how to defend a ship, let's say, in the South China Sea, right? There's an Aegis radar on the ship, and it's connected to certain defensive weapons that are meant to hit incoming missiles and planes that are trying to attack it. Well, we want to be able to see beyond what the ship radar can see, and there's ways to connect satellite data to that. There's ways to connect information from other ships to that, and there's ways to connect information on sensors that are on aircraft flying around to connect to that. The issue is hardly any of it connects, because the Department of Defense and most ministries of defense around the world are set up to buy things. They're set up to buy airplanes and ships and radar sets and things like that. And it's what we call in our industry a platform or a vehicle-based system, right? But if you turn this whole system on its side and say, well, I'm really trying to accomplish a mission like firefighting or defending the ship from being hit with a missile, well, then you can start to build basically a technology roadmap, not for that airplane that's flying around out there, but build the technology roadmap with the things you have today. And so how do we network a satellite sensor through an aircraft sensor and system that can communicate back to that radar system on the ship and widen and increase the height of the defensive bubble around the ship? And we've shown how to do that in the Pacific with real aircraft and real ships and real satellites, but we had to basically bolt together a temporary network to try to do that. And we haven't solved all the problems Ray elucidated, which is how do we keep it secure? How do we make sure it can't be jammed? How can we make sure that it can't be spoofed? And they say, well, there's 100 missiles coming in, but there's only 2. Things like that. So we need, again, all the intelligence and all the brain power of this industry, because if we want to continue to have deterrence to conflict, we need to complicate the other side's equation for success. If they think, and a given adversary, let's call it, believes they can sink 2 or 3 aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, they might try it. And if they have a 90% confidence level in their wargaming that they can do it, then they may go through with it. But if we keep moving the goalposts further and further out by saying, wow, I don't know if I can spoof that system, or I don't know if they can see this missile coming off the launcher and hit the launcher. Maybe I don't want to start anything right now. I'll wait until I catch up. But if we keep moving the goalposts with digital technology into the future, with platforms and systems we have today, our goal is to prevent conflict or any potential adversary from saying, I think I can make this a success. I'm launching an attack now. We don't want that. And so that's why we're so aggressive in trying to pair up with the tech and telecom industry, because we need all of these technologies to help us move that goalpost of deterrence further out in the future and hopefully never have a major conflict that we're involved in.
Absolutely. But Ray, one of the things that you started by saying, and actually I think you said 3 or 4 times in your presentation and also already here, was that, looking for, you said you were working with Lockheed Martin, but also looking for other companies as well to do this with. Right. And my mind has immediately gone, if I was Lockheed Martin, I don't want you working with anyone else, because then immediately sort of, there's big questions, more questions about security and, clash of interests there. So how does that work?
No, I don't think there's a clash of interests at all, Jim. We'll get along fine, right?
Yeah, we'll get along fine. But we want to go into an open architecture, standards-based network. Yeah. And the Defense Department attempts to buy competitive platforms from different companies, and we're not allowed to collaborate with our colleagues in our industry. We can collaborate with colleagues in other industries and create that open architecture. I want Raytheon or Boeing to be able to use the same network that Ray's talking about, because I need to connect to their platforms too. That's the real key to that.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the benefit of doing this on a platform approach. And I want to stress that notion of a platform, because our industry works in these monolithic generational changes. You're either on a 2G network or a 3G network or a 4G. This approach ushers in the multi-G network, right? We've spent the last 20 years throughout the technology industry virtualizing and turning everything into software. So everything now sits in containers, or it will soon, and it'll all be cloud-based. And then the question is, so what do you do with it? We see the cellular industry as a natural place to host massive verticals. The defense industry is an example. The public safety network used to be in the United States for decades, its own network. Of course, it was horrific. Things didn't talk to each other. Purchasing cycles were done out of sequence. There's a lot of documentation post 9/11 as to how that led to so much more carnage than was necessary. We now finally, and it took 30 years to build a public network, a cellular network that hosted the public safety network on a preemptive basis if needed. It's called FirstNet. Let's not take another 30 years as an industry looking for ways to host entire communications architectures. The defense industry, perfect. The entire healthcare industry could move. The global shipping industry, and you're going to have the CEO of Maersk on later, can move. That's how the industry should look, but it doesn't operate that way, because we go, well, that'll be 6G. Well, what do you wait 10 years? So this is a platform that says, I now know how to connect to every user. Speak whatever language you want. The healthcare industry is going to want something different than what Jim wants. The challenges are going to be different. So that waveform will be different. Mm-hmm. The music industry may want something different. The automotive industry may, for autonomous vehicles, it's a completely different set of challenges than what Jim's looking at, right? So, and they'll be collaborating with other industries as well. So this is a huge opportunity for the cellular industry to say, I've globalized, I've scaled up, and now I'm going to host the communication enablement of all of these industries and drive their productivity, their digitalization. It is the revenue opportunity of 5G. But unfortunately, we're looking at it at a monolithic level. And frankly, some of the things Jim's team needs to do will work well on 5G, but some of them are not. And OTFS is just going to sit right next to it, and it's going to solve the remainder. That's what drove the partnership. It wasn't just the 5G piece. It was the fact that we have the ability elastically to become non-discoverable on one level and to be robust and fat as a pipe on the other side.
Yeah, the picture that you're both painting of this sort of like mass communication, and I love, by the way, your analogy of that sort of shield, the globe there. What are the biggest challenges to actually making this happen, and making this happen in a transparent, sustainable, solid, reliable way?
Well, one of the challenges we have is our customer is the Ministry of Defense in the UK, it's the Department of Defense in the United States. They are used to, again, buying really complicated Newtonian technology platforms, right? Hypersonic missile or a stealth fighter airplane. Those kinds of really complex physical machines take upwards of 10 years to develop, test, make sure they're safe and effective, and then build in factories at scale, enough numbers of those new products to make a difference. But the technology and telecom industry works on whether it's 10-week or 10-month cycle. And that's an order of magnitude faster than MODs and departments of defense are used to working. They don't have the administrative processes for it. They don't have the government regulations or laws to be able to move that fast. There's a substantial oversight system, especially in the test and evaluation space. We got to make sure this thing really works and doesn't become an unreliable product that we're defending ourselves with. So just the time cycle, the clock speed of our customer as he or she stands today is not ready yet for having these mission-based solutions where every 6 to 12 months, that's what I'm shooting for. Every 6 to 12 months, we'll make that ship defense system better by having a faster connection, a better pipe, a new satellite we connected to, instead of let's wait 10 years for the next radar system. It's too long.
See, that is fascinating. And if you'd have said that a year ago, if we'd have been sitting on this stage a year ago, okay, a year and a week ago, and you'd have said that, I probably would have just moved on. But I can't now. I can't just, ignore the fact that the world is changing so quickly and changing in a way that, whatever you believe, we can or cannot anticipate it. It depends whether you feel that things can be anticipated or not, but it's changing. And you are both working within industries, Jim, obviously you especially, working within an industry where your customer is going, oh, that's what I've now got to deal with. So you've said, yeah, we need them to be quicker, but actually they do need to be quicker. So where's that all going to meet?
There are some initiatives. I'll just speak to the U.S. Department of Defense for a moment. There's a rapid development and evaluation and purchasing initiative going on in part of the Department of Defense. There's they have fast systems in each of the services. So the Air Force has a rapid capabilities office, they call it, to get something kind of identified quickly and fielded faster. Our Skunk Works operation works with this RCO group a lot. That's where the U-2 and the SR-71 came from, for example. We're working on things I would call actually equally interesting right now with that Rapid Capabilities Office and our Skunk Works operation. But the bulk of the U.S. defense budget and the bulk of most MOD defense budgets around the world is dedicated to a process that is in the slower lane, if you will. But there are some fast lanes being developed. Are they going to be developed quickly enough and widely enough that we can really advance the ball here?
But it sounds like what you're saying is actually the tech industry here, the tech that you are developed and have tested, could actually change the way governments can think about the speed in which they could operate.
Right. It's going to change the way everybody thinks, Sasha. It's, this industry has tried to put 4G and 5G in the same box. It didn't work. Nobody does it anymore. It was the big vision. We've done that. We've now got a platform that naturally hosts what works today, 4G and 5G. We're thrilled to work with the industry in a 4G, 5G context, help them improve their economics and their performance. But what's great is it becomes a platform that allows innovation cycles to move forward. So as Jim's pushing on that commercially, because there's enough traction for you to, the challenges there on the commercial side of getting the customers to think at faster cycles, we're helping the industry, the cellular industry, get ready for those faster cycles too. Because by the time he gets the purchasing cycle shrunk to 6 months, we've got to be ready to upgrade our networks in 6 months. And we're so used to it. We upgrade our car. You get in your car in the morning and it tells you what the new software is, right? At least depending on what you drive. This is all happening, whether we like it or not. So I think this is going to allow our industry to scale, to be far more profitable. Anybody that thinks that the industry needs to be reorganized because, customers are not scalable, and there were some comments made yesterday that the European system is broken. Innovation will solve all of that, as long as we go to a platform level.
It's been absolutely fascinating listening to both of you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ray and Jim, thank you both very much for your time here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Thank you. Really, really interesting thoughts and opinions there. And what we are going to do now is move on to a different industry. Very pleased to say that our next two speakers, Andrew Feinberg, the CEO of Netcracker and Boston Gene, and we also have from the NEC Corporation, the President and CEO, Takayuki Morita-san, who will be here on this stage in a moment, because we are now going to concentrate on the data itself. The data that we all live and breathe, the data that we casually make every single day, the data produced by just walking here in the morning or getting your cup of coffee. Data that has a value, a financial value, sure, but what about if we could also get a data value that was fed back to the person who produced the data? And I'm talking now about life-changing value. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you're going to enjoy this.
We live in a data-driven society. With the advent of smartphones, mobile broadband, growth in mobile data, and an increase in video-based services, the amount of data generated has grown exponentially. But when this data is harnessed correctly, it can improve businesses, societies, and even save lives. Cancer is an incredibly complex and intelligent disease. While standard treatments can work well for some patients, they can be ineffective or even lethal for others with the same diagnosis. Boston Gene powers healthcare's transition to personalized medicine using artificial intelligence-based molecular and immune profiling to improve the standard of care, accelerate research, and improve economics. Utilizing powerful analytics and machine learning, the latest cancer research and scientific discoveries are continuously aggregated to provide physicians with optimal treatment options that are unique to each patient. As a global diversified conglomerate, NEC plays a pivotal role across different industries, ranging from telecom to healthcare. From drug discovery to financial services, mitigating natural disasters to ensuring children have adequate vaccinations, NEC provides infrastructure that brings people together and improves their lives. NEC helps governments build solutions that create safer cities and develops new solutions that leverage emerging 5G capabilities. With world-leading artificial intelligence, machine learning, biometrics, cloud technologies, and 5G solutions, NEC is orchestrating a brighter world. Netcracker partners with technology innovators to enable business and technology journeys that will transform telcos into techos. Netcracker solutions leverage artificial intelligence and big data analytics powered by cloud-native software and professional services in every part of the world. As a trusted industry partner for 30 years, Netcracker is revolutionizing BSS and OSS and partner services in innovative ways and transitioning operators to multi-cloud environments to take advantage of new business models. With an unbroken delivery record and the largest investment in innovation in the industry, Netcracker is helping our customers accelerate digital growth and profitability.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Feinberg.
I'm Takayuki Morita.
Today, Morita-san and I will talk about the power of data and an incredible value that it can bring to our businesses, communities, or even society as a whole. When we think about big data, lots of things come to mind. Algorithms, AI, clusters, machine learning, and many, many more. What are they, other than, of course, a bunch of buzzwords? They're all critical tools that enable data analytics. Today, we'll show you how at Boston Gene, NextG, and Netcracker, we use these tools to achieve higher efficiencies, better decisions, and greater outcomes. Let me start with a topic to which we can all relate: cancer. Most of us know someone battling cancer. Some of us lost a loved one to cancer. Cancer is a frightening disease, and it's on the rise. At a very high level, cancer is a genetic disease. It's caused by changes in genes that control the way cells grow and multiply. Today, if two cancer patients are diagnosed with the same disease, in vast majority of cases, they treat it the same way. The problem with that, of course, is that at molecular level, every one of us is completely unique. And a therapy that can work really well for one patient can be ineffective, toxic, or even lethal for another. Let me introduce you to Curtis. In the summer of 2018, Curtis was a 47-year-old, happy, healthy man with an adorable 3-year-old daughter. He had a PhD, a great job, and a healthy lifestyle. That summer, however, one morning, he woke up with an acute abdominal pain. After a number of doctor visits and tests, Curtis was diagnosed with a B-cell lymphoma, a type of blood cancer. As a young and healthy man, Curtis was administered what's called frontline treatment, a standard chemotherapy used to treat the type of condition he had. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and neither did next 4 progressively more toxic treatments. With no more hope left, his doctor recommended that he undergoes comprehensive genomic testing at Boston Gene, a company that had just received clinical license for its breakthrough technology. This is how we met Curtis in 2020. By that time, his cancer metastasized to other organs. And what you see on your screen is a PET scan of his lungs. That white mass on the left represents an 11-centimeter tumor blocking his lung. And there were others throughout his body. He could not walk, could barely speak, was spitting blood, and he had essentially 2 to 4 weeks left to live. Boston Gene ran a 22,000 gene comprehensive genomic profiling panel on his tissue biopsy and discovered multiple rare mutations. Our cloud-native AI-driven software ran complex analytics and very complex bioinformatic pipelines, processing massive amounts of data and correlating Curtis's molecular portrait with everything that was available in multiple patient cohorts for treatments, clinical trials, publications, outcomes, and therapies. With these analyses, we went to his oncologist with Curtis's comprehensive molecular profile, root cause of why all prior therapies failed, and recommendation for treatment. Curtis's doctor followed Boston Gene's recommendation. And what you see here is Curtis's PET scan only 3 months later, where Curtis is completely cancer-free. Now, 2+ years later, Curtis is still cancer-free, and we expect him to stay that way for a very long time. There is no doubt that Curtis and thousands of others would not be alive today without modern technology that takes all of those buzzwords and turn them into powerful tools enabled by brilliant scientists. Maria-san.
Andrew spoke about how Boston Gene is using data and AI to change individual lives. I have 3 cases that show how data and AI are helping to improve our societies as we adapt to climate and environmental change. My first case is agriculture. Climate change affects the agricultural environment. New weather patterns have a negative impact on a farmer's ability to maintain crop production. In order to make the best decisions for their crops, they need a data-driven approach. We partnered with a global leading packaged food company, Kagome, to find a way to use data and AI to enable environmentally friendly farming. AI analyzes data from moisture sensors in the ground and satellite above, and makes recommendations for the best use of water and fertilizers. Using this solution, farmers are seeing a 20% increase in harvest with a 15% reduction in water use. They also use 20% less fertilizers. This solution is now available in 11 countries, including Portugal and Spain. The second case is about disaster prevention. Climate change is causing more and more natural disasters, which damage city infrastructure and endangers people's lives. Rebuilding city infrastructure after a disaster is very expensive and can slow economic growth. On top of that, there is also an impact on CO2 emissions. Actually, more than 10% of global CO2 emissions comes from the impact of natural disasters and rebuilding infrastructures. Using satellites and AI can help provide an early warning for disasters, so we can save lives and minimize damage. At the same time, we can visualize large areas of infrastructure degradations. This information provides insights for preventive maintenance for infrastructure. Using our solution reduces maintenance and repair costs by 50% over the long term, and future CO2 emissions can be reduced accordingly. We launched this solution in Malaysia and Japan, and we are expanding into other countries in Asia now. My last case is about recycling. To minimize waste, recycling plants must maintain an effective sorting process. This process, of course, required manpower and time. It is also quite hazardous and may cause health issues for workers. NEC is working with Ishizaka Sangyo, a Japanese recycling company, to solve these problems. We are using cameras, AI, and a private 5G to remotely manage heavy equipment. This approach leads to a highly efficient, accurate, and a safe sorting process. We can help them maintain 98% recycling rate and ultimately achieve a 100% rate. We'll see more and more cases today as data and AI solutions are connected. And the connections will come from the network infrastructure that service providers are building. To talk more about new service providers' business opportunities, back to Andrew.
Thank you, Maria-san. Thank you. One of the prevailing themes at Mobile World Congress this year, of course, is the CSP's journey from telcos to techcos. This journey is about much more than just core technology. It's about culture, talent, operational tools, processes, and very importantly, the evolution from a fixed physical environment to a flexible multi-tenant software ecosystem. And that, of course, includes getting deeper into our customers' lives by optimizing and personalizing every customer interaction with real-time contextual analytics at a massive scale. Let me take you through a real-life customer example of a mobile operator that had already undergone most of that transformation. Meet Liz, a customer who complained on social media about poor video performance and tagged the service provider. The service provider's BSS picked up Liz's post through its active listeners. Based on correlation of different data sources, the advanced analytics-driven BSS platform analyzed multiple parameters and all in real time, and determined that the problem was actually very simple. Liz had an outdated phone, and it just simply could not handle the newer games that she was playing. The system then took it a step further, analyzed all competitors' offering for plans for 5G for physical devices, and then dynamically created a personalized upgrade offer for both new phone and service plan that were cheaper than its competitors. In creating that offer, the BSS accounted for many intangible factors, including Liz's lifetime value, loyalty, social media influence status, and many, many others. She received her promotional offer, which of course included a very compelling financing at a 1% interest rate for the device via operator's Cash 360 mobile wallet app. That Cash 360 mobile wallet app was a joint venture of the operator and its financial services arm as part of the telco to techco fintech initiative. Then she simply clicked Buy Now button and walked to the store. In this case, we have an unhappy customer who turned into a loyal follower. That's nice, but what does it really mean for our top and bottom lines? Higher productivity, higher efficiency, higher digital and non-telco revenues, higher retention, and very importantly, the stock price that outperformed every other one in its peer group over that time period. This evolution of becoming techcos requires telcos to develop new skill sets in technologies such as cloud, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. It also requires adopting new operational concepts like Agile and DevOps. We, telcos, need to enable customer-led joint development projects, provide a co-creation platform for developers, and be able to collaborate with partners at scale with open APIs. We also need to collaborate inside new ecosystems within groupings of related companies that work together to deliver new services to customers. Netcracker cloud-native digital platform help operators accelerate their digital transformation journeys by providing them with the right foundation to accomplish all of that. As you can see, the challenges in our businesses and society today are incredibly complex, and that complexity is continuously increasing as we're flooded with more and more data. Technology is a tool, and we have to be very careful with tools. Almost any tool, virtual or physical, can be used for good or can be used to cause damage. Our role, and I would argue our responsibility as technology and business leaders, is to leverage data in a positive fashion, to improve our society, to enrich our experiences, and of course, to save lives. Boston Gene, NSC, and Netcracker are investing in that key area. We're creating the software platforms and technology solutions to manage, process, and act on massive amounts of data to create the best possible outcomes. Welcome to the data-driven future. Thank you.
Thank you.
you. It's really interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you, gentlemen. Now, what we are going to do now is move to one of those industries that sometimes you really can't be quite sure whether it should still be placed in its original category or whether actually now it's turned into a tech industry. Now, this could be a tech industry, and I will find out whether they'd like to call themselves a tech company in a moment, but it's involved in transportation, moving goods from A to B, or indeed wherever that end user customer may be. So let's hear now how one of the global giants is transforming itself. Please welcome the CEO of Maersk, Vincent Clerc. Vincent, hello, hi.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Take a seat.
Good to be here, thank you.
And almost the same question that I asked Jim, first of all. You know this is a mobile phone show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So tell me, are you still a transportation company or are you now a tech company? Where do you see yourselves?
I think both would be the right answer. Today, you can't transport anything without having a really, really solid tech foundation to do it. We operate really large global networks at sea, at land, in the air. And what connects those networks and those assets is actually the technology that we deploy. From our customers' perspective, the most important thing, or the thing number one that they expect from us, aside from transporting their goods, is actually to provide them with visibility with what's happening with their goods on the way. And that requires, edge computing, that requires cloud, and that requires a network that is extremely powerful. So even if the logistics industry has not been one of the front runner in the digital transformation, I think this is really coming. We've invested a lot in our own capacity. It's a huge cultural change to move from thinking of yourself as a transportation company and actually thinking of yourself as a tech-powered transportation company. But it also requires that we mobilize now the ecosystem, and that's actually why I'm here today, is to start engaging with an ecosystem. The problems we have to solve are enormous. We have to do ours, but we also need to mobilize an ecosystem. There is a huge opportunity in solving these problems.
I have to say that if this was like 3 years ago, three and a half years ago, I don't imagine you and I would have been sitting here at all. Not because it's not very nice to sit and talk to you, Vincent, but 3.5 years ago, I don't think we would have been having the same conversations about supply lines, supply chains, people understanding just how complex the entire system is. It would have been supply chains, something that someone else deals with. Yeah. And then suddenly, over the last few years, you're having those conversations at board level and at customer level. People are going, supply chain problems. And it's there everywhere.
Yeah. Our world, this conference, this furniture, anything that we use, it runs on a global supply chain, which is, I think the last couple of years have shown, incredibly fragile. And we take that fragile and very important piece of infrastructure for granted. And we've seen companies that have had serious problem in maintaining the resilience of their supply chain over the last 2 years because they've taken it too much for granted. Our role and what we want to do now is to actually strengthen, build that resilience, enable it to be much more proof to the changes and the expectations that companies have. This should be something actually we don't talk about. When it goes well, it should be something we don't talk about. The reason why we're talking about it a lot is because it hasn't gone so well lately. And I think it's incumbent on us, and it's a huge opportunity for us, but also for the tech ecosystem to bring actually solutions to these weaknesses that we have seen.
Okay, well, let's talk about the challenges that you have then, because you're talking a lot about the solutions that you need. So what are the challenges? What are you faced with that you need to sort?
So I think if you start with a couple of examples of what have happened, right? Consumer behaviors are changing. Not only when there is a pandemic where they suddenly want something very different or do not have access to some of the goods that they usually have access to, but in general, consumer demands are changing. companies need to have more agility and at the same time more resilience. So this fair weather planning of everything just, I cut a purchase order, I want it in my warehouse 3 months from now, and then I just wait and then it shows up. It doesn't happen. You don't know 3 months before what you're going to need in your warehouse. And a lot of things are happening on the way, whether it's on the manufacturing side, on the transportation side, or on your consumer side. And the ability to have both visibility, but to be able to predict also what is going on, means high reliance on cloud, high reliance on AI, high reliance on ML also to help us then devise alternative scenarios to build that resilience that there is. We operate these large pieces of assets, whether it's an ocean terminal, it's a ship, it's a network of trucks or warehouses, omni-channel DCs and so on, and all of this needs to be connected. So there's a huge issue. I think the biggest issue probably that we have to start with is disconnecting the data.
Yeah.
You live in a completely siloed data world, and we've seen that just inside our company. So we operate a terminal arm and we operate a shipping arm. And for a long time, it's been a head scratcher for us why we couldn't increase productivity in our hubs. And at some point, simply by freeing the data flow and merging the teams and having them approach the working of the terminal and of the ships as if it was one business rather than two profit centers, we've been able to improve terminal productivity by 40%.
That's a huge change.
It creates a huge amount of infrastructure, a huge amount of capacity that we didn't have before. Imagine if you can do that across the supply chain. I think it's an $8 trillion industry with a lot of waste.
So at the moment, are you not able to do that? So you're talking about your hubs and ships. Well, okay, well, let's bring in then the next stage, the lorries, the warehouses, all of that. So quite literally, because I know what you are wanting to do is not just be, the shipping industry. You are now wanting to go right from that point all the way to literally knocking on a customer's door.
Yeah. So if you start at it from the customer perspective, the supply chain is not depending on one product. It's not depending on a ship or a plane or a warehouse. It's actually the connections between all of that supply chain, from the purchase order, through the manufacturing, through the supply chain, all the way up to the doorsteps of their customers. We are in the process of linking our data. The terminal example was a good example. There's many others that we're linking between our ship network, our truck network, the rails, and so on. Gathering data also from our vendors, because we do operate a lot of assets ourselves, but we'd also rely on a large network of vendors that provide services to us. And if you want to solve the visibility problem from the customer perspective, you can't only solve it from what you do. You need to solve it from his supply chain, which means being able to aggregate data that are not necessarily your data, that are data that some of your competitors are doing, so that you can provide back the visibility and the actionability to your customers in a neutral way.
So you are looking at the entire process, working with your customer at every sort of step. That's a lot of data.
It's a lot of data.
It is a lot of data. And you mentioned that you were using AI. Well, okay, you're using AI in a business that might have to change very, very quickly. You can't predict in this quite unpredictable world what is going to be needed. So how are you using AI and machine learning as well, you were saying?
I think machine learning for us is as important, because AI helps us actually either predict or in some cases figure out, once this is starting to unfold, what are some of the consequences that are going to have. The networks that we operate, they're so complex is that you have secondary effects and third level effects that you can never really compute in a human head. So this really helps us understand the impacts on the network. But what ML is really helping us with is actually devising solutions, alternatives, and so on. And you can test the logic, and you can keep on improving on some of the things that you can do, developing alternatives, providing alternatives to customers, being much more proactive. If you go back to your customer and say, hey, there's a ship stuck in the Suez Canal, that's nice, but that doesn't really help him. So if you're able actually to provide solutions, if you're able to provide alternatives, they may not be great, but if you're able to really be the first one and show that proactiveness, find solutions, then you have an edge. The other thing that we're using a lot is the digital twins. The investment in edge computing is huge. I mean, you talk about these hubs. You know, you have miles of piers, tens of thousands of containers. Everything needs to be orchestrated. There's no room for things. So you can actually run your operation basically by knowing the containers that are coming in, the containers that need to go out, and you can start to plan your yard, your stack, and figure out when problems are occurring, what is occurring, how do you do this, and through this modeling, you actually change the way the layout of your terminals, you gradually improve on a lot of your operation. You know, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure, physical infrastructure, you know, do we have enough ports, roads? I think actually that we have enough of that. But we don't have the technology to get the best out of it, which is really why actually, you know, for us to go through the cultural transformation that we're going into, to build the coding muscle, the capabilities that we have to do that, but also to mobilize the ecosystem is absolutely important. I think there is a tremendous value creation opportunity here on a very limited base of assets.
You mentioned the cultural transformation, and that will be an area that many people watching this will have gone through within their business, whether or not it is a mobile business or it is, again, another vertical which is going through that digital transformation. What's been the thing that you've really learned out of that? And do you, first of all, actually, let me ask you, do you think you did it well?
It's super hard to decide actually whether the pace at which you're transforming is a good pace or a bad pace. You know, you're a manager, you're a leader, you're always impatient. You would always tend to think that we should be going a little bit faster than what we're going. I think we've done a good job. We've done a good job at actually integrating new capabilities and making them count and bear for us. We're a company of 104,000 colleagues. 50% of those have less than 2 years in the company. You know, a lot of them now coming from tech backgrounds and engineering backgrounds. If you look at what it is to be a product manager in Maersk today versus what it was 10 years ago, it's a completely different profile. And the business actually evolves faster today than it ever has. So in that sense, you know, we're doing well. Are the problems solved yet? And can we say, okay, this has actually produced the sustainable competitive advantage, created the value for our customers that we would like to see created? Not yet. So it's a big transformation, and it's going to take a while still.
When you say it's going to take a while, you know, if we were sitting here in a year, would you feel that you were more there, or would you give us 5 years? Or?
No, I don't think, well, I hope not. I certainly, I mean, our plan is really that we're over 100 years old company, so there's a lot of, you know, rusty image and stuff. So it's not only on the steel that we operate, but to change the culture actually is something that we have invested a lot in the last 5 years. And as you do that, you start to have a lot of foundational work. You know, not all our applications were cloud ready. Not all of our data was connected, piped, and labeled right. So you spend the first couple of years actually getting a lot of basic stuff that is not very exciting in place. We're getting to the part now where this hard work is done, and when we can actually contemplate something that is a lot more exciting for our colleagues and a lot more exciting for our customers. So I would say another couple of years, and then we'll start to really see this punch quite strongly.
2025.
Yeah.
You're thinking, okay. You gave the most amazing statistic, which I'd not heard before, and that was the percentage of your colleagues who've been there for less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that again?
About half of them.
So half of the people working for you have actually been employed with you for less than 2 years.
Yeah.
And so very much they are going to be within the tech area, aren't they?
Not all of them, but the funny thing is, you know, we used to have a business strategy and a tech strategy that was supposed to support the business strategy. Today, the tech, you cannot even have a chapter about tech in our strategy because it's completely baked into what we're doing. So I think what has changed is not only, you know, the thousands of colleagues we have brought with engineering background or data scientists or people like that. It's also the fact that all the product managers, all the operators, they need today to have a completely different tech literacy to be able to work with tech. They need to be able to talk tech. Leadership need to be able to talk tech.
Which then strikes me, you've got a real job at the moment, finding enough people and finding the right sort of people, which, just, a real quick hands up in the room. Who else is having challenges with recruitment at the moment? Getting the right sort of, okay, there we go. Right, and you've got a huge influx of new people coming into the business.
Yeah. What is really interesting is actually tech people, they love a really interesting challenge. And we got really cool problems to solve, problems that are going to make a huge difference in the world, whether it is to run the infrastructure that we operate efficiently, it's not the case today, whether we can run also the infrastructure that we have in a sustainable manner, because there is the whole energy transition and all of that. And we've taken leadership positions in that as well. And that is something that really resonates with the crowds. And I've had a lot of interviews with senior leaders that we hired in Maersk, and they always start by saying, I would never consider working for a company like Maersk until you actually talk with them and explain to them what we're about, where the company is in its transformation and what we're trying to do. And then you suddenly find that actually the hiring conversation is relatively easy.
You need to merge your HR and your PR departments.
Exactly.
Get more people understanding what it is that you do. Vincent, it's been really interesting to hear where Maersk is now and where it is going as well. And I look forward to hearing where you are in 2025.
Absolutely.
Vincent Clerc, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you. Well, we have promised lots and lots and lots of different types of industries today. And we're going to now move on to our final guest of this particular keynote. We've been talking about, remember, the evolution of innovation. When one industry innovates, that evolution moves over right across into different sectors. So now we're going to look at a telco that works within an environment with multiple stakeholders, both in the field and the sea, you are about to find out. Please welcome the CEO of Telstra, Vicky Brady.
Thanks, Sasha, and good morning, everyone. It is so wonderful to be back here in Barcelona. I'm 6 months into my role of leading Telstra, and I can't think of a better place to be right now than here in Barcelona with peers and with friends from all around the world. Now, for those of you that aren't as familiar with Telstra, we're Australia's leading telecommunications company. We have a mobile network that reaches 99.5% of the population. We own or operate around 400,000 kilometres of undersea cable. And we recently acquired Digicel Pacific, who operates across 6 countries in the Pacific. Around 8,000 global companies rely on our networks, including 200 of the top 500 organisations globally. Now, I think it is an incredibly exciting time to be in telecommunications. I see this next decade of one of really profound opportunity for us as mobile operators. Connectivity is absolutely the bedrock. There are estimates today that in the next period, digital innovation will create $10 to $15 trillion worth of value. And what we do is absolutely at the foundation of that. But I think the real impact is how we work to enable the things on top of our networks, great industrial and great social innovations. Our opportunity is to help our customers make the most of these technologies, to go beyond brilliant connectivity to actually delivering brilliant partnering, so that we can bring solutions together for our customers and unlock those amazing opportunities. Now, it is going to take a different approach, an approach you've heard mentioned today in this keynote session a number of times, which is all about collaboration. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. As I said, connectivity is absolutely the bedrock. And Telstra has been an innovation pioneer now for more than 100 years in Australia. Australia's geography and population demands that. So we have a land mass of around 7.6 million square kilometres, and we have a population of just under 26 million. So that's about 15 times the size of Spain, with a little bit under half the population. So it's taken decades of ingenuity from our engineers and our partners like Ericsson. We were the first to launch 4G and the first to launch 5G in Australia. We've also built one of the largest IoT networks in the world. It covers 4 million square kilometres. That's a little bit bigger than the area of Western Europe and Scandinavia combined. And it has around 6 million connected devices on it, and we're adding 20,000 every week to that network. Today, we're also celebrating 5 years of 5G in Australia with Telstra. And over that period, we've had 18 world firsts. Today, we are announcing number 19 with Ericsson, where we have managed to deliver a 5G data call over 100 kilometres on a mid-band radio. And that's really essential to what we do in bringing connectivity further out into regional Australia. Now, 12 months ago, my predecessor, Andy Penn, stood on this stage, and he spoke about this incredibly unique point in time where we have technologies like 5G, AI and automation, edge compute, and an explosion of applications, creating this very special, unique opportunity for us. Now, we have an important role to play. I think our role is all about how we become an ecosystem builder, building on top of that connectivity we provide, to bring together those new technologies, to bring insights into the data that is travelling over our networks. Now, our role to do that well means we have to partner. We must partner with our customers, with technology leaders, with industry leaders and experts to be able to co-create solutions for our customers. This requires a very big mindset shift. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today. I've been in the telco sector for more than 20 years now. I suspect there are many people in the room that have been part of the industry for a long time. And certainly in my time, I've seen many opportunities appear and then pass us by, as we were more focused on protecting what we had than thinking about the larger opportunity that we could be part of helping to create and unlock and share in. So if we don't change, we risk that that value that gets created over our networks gets captured by others. And so for me, this is about collaboration, to be comfortable that actually to solve these problems and unlock opportunities for our customers, we can't do it on our own. We've absolutely got to take a different mindset in how we approach it. We've got to be comfortable actually not being in control of that end-to-end solution. It's going to be essential to do that for us to grow sustainably into the future. Now, at Telstra, we already collaborate with a lot of significant global technology partners, from Ericsson to Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, AWS and Samsung, just to name a few. We're also working with innovation hubs and universities and startups in some pretty exciting new projects. Now, many of you, I'm sure, sitting here in the room are going, that sounds wonderful, it's great in theory, but how does it practically happen? So I wanted to share with you today some examples. Now, 2 years ago, we started to build capabilities into industry sectors where we could help work with those sectors to solve their business challenges and unlock opportunities. And that was down at an industry level. One of those industries is agriculture. It still has a huge opportunity to take advantage of the benefits from digitisation. Now, it's also one that's very close to my heart. I grew up in a tiny little town in Australia with less than 2,000 people. So I saw firsthand growing up just how impactful the agriculture sector is for our country. Now, we also have a very proud history in Australia. We've been a real leader in agriculture, and in fact, our farmers face some of the most volatile growing environments in the world. So our farmers, like our telcos, have had to be incredibly inventive and innovative to be able to have their businesses thrive in our environment. It's also why it's so important that we lead the world in farm digitisation. Now, the Australian Farmers Federation has estimated, and they have a roadmap that shows, we can go from $75 billion of agricultural production in our country to $100 billion by 2030. There are also estimates that are showing that, in fact, digital technologies could on their own deliver an extra $20 billion per annum in agricultural production in Australia. So it's got massive benefits for us and our country, and will make a really big contribution globally. Now, for that to be achieved, it absolutely will require real ingenuity. The size of our farms in Australia are enormous, and it can be impossible to cover them fully with a mobile network. I was recently on a farm in Australia talking with a farmer who is probably at the leading edge of digital technologies, and he said to me, "Vicky, today, connectivity is like electricity. You can't run a farm without it." And so we're innovating to give farmers options. We're using a mix of our mobile technologies, our IoT network, working with satellite providers, and other complementary technology. A really good example of it is a little startup in Australia based in country New South Wales called Zedify, and they're using a long-range Wi-Fi solution. So we're innovating with them, and it's a great example where we have to be comfortable in that case of not being the only connectivity solution. The next challenge is once you have everything connected, you obviously have a lot of data. And farmers already run incredibly complex businesses. They don't want to be experts in data analytics and cyber security. So for us, our role is how do we bring that together and make it simple, make it easy for them to take those benefits. Now, I was recently down in Wagga Wagga. This is a country town in Australia. It's about halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. And I got to go and visit Australia's first hands-free farm. It's a great living, breathing example of what it means to digitise a farm. And in that, we're working with Charles Sturt University, with Food Agility, and we're deploying something called our Telstra Data Hub. So our Telstra Data Hub is all about bringing that data together that's getting collected across all of those connected devices and making it simple, aggregating it, standardising it, and making it easy to share and innovate on top of. One of the applications under development is optimising the use of fertiliser, a key input cost for farmers, but also if we can get that right, we'll have a massive impact on the climate as well. So we are solving real problems, but also providing a platform for others to innovate on. And we have people right across the ag tech sector, from startups to universities, involved in that. Another big challenge faced in the food industry is the ability to trace the movement of food products, whether it be from the paddock or the sea, all the way through to a plate anywhere in the world. Now, we're working closely with the government, along with industry players, and again, we are deploying our Telstra Data Hub combined with IBM's blockchain technology. What we're doing is with a company called Western Rock Lobsters, for them to be able to trace a lobster from the point it's taken from the sea to when it lands on a plate anywhere around the world. And so we're digitising that information real time right along the supply chain. Now, that's going to deliver benefits to regulators, to processors, to fishers, and it's all about protecting and growing a $360 million per annum industry for Australia. Now, this is our opportunity. I think it's so exciting to be able to innovate on top of the connectivity that we provide and unlock these opportunities. And I use these examples to show what true collaboration looks like, that we have to be okay and comfortable actually with not controlling the end-to-end solution. Now, farming's just one example. There are so many industries and so many opportunities out there where the power of our networks, combined with that ability to collaborate, can deliver and solve some of the biggest problems facing the world. 2 years ago, we would have found that challenging to face into and truly partner, be comfortable not controlling the end-to-end solution. It just wasn't part of our mindset to partner. And so the shift we're going through, that change of mindset, frankly, is as big as many of the technology innovations that we're involved in and critical to our success. In my view, a telco fit for the future has to be brilliant, of course, at connectivity, but needs to be brilliant also at collaborating. Our opportunity is absolutely to help our customers take advantage of these incredible technologies. And it has to be beyond just connectivity. It's absolutely the start point, but it is not the end point. It's just the beginning. Thank you.